So step one to creating this copper material is we're going to hit Shift A, go to Mesh and Icosphere, make sure we type in 5 subdivisions, and then right click the object and shade smooth. Then if we go to our camera view, we can change the focal length to a 102, just so we get a nice up close view of our mesh. Then we can change to a rendered preview, and if you'll notice, so I don't have a light in the scene currently. So I'm in Eevee. You can do this in cycles, whichever you prefer. But if you're Eevee, make sure you check ambient occlusion, bloom, and screen space reflections. But once you're in here, go ahead and do this drop down and uncheck scene world. Then on these HDRIs, go ahead and select the interior one. That's the one I'm going to be using, and it'll just give us some nice reflections when we're doing the material. So now that we have our scene set up, we're going to head over to the shading workspace. Then to set up your workspace, you can add workspaces like this, subtract them by going on the corner and going upwards. You can do it to the sides and everything, and that's basically how you set up your workspace. I have mine like this. And make sure you go back to rendered preview and have the correct HDRI set with scene world unchecked, and then you should be good to go. At the end of this tutorial, I just want to remind you, we're going to have the material you saw on the thumbnail right here. We're going to have this one, and at the end, I'll show you how to tweak 1 or 2 settings to get an additional material of copper, which is this one, and just so you get 2 materials for 1 tutorial, which is a pretty good deal if you ask me. So anyways, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hit new material. We're going to call this, I'll call this one refined copper, because at the end we'll make a less refined copper. It's still refined, but it's older. Anyways, so the first up, we're going to hit Shift A and add a noise texture, like so. Now that we have our noise texture, we're going to go to Edit Preferences and make sure you have the Node Wrangler add-on checked. So just search for Node Wrangler and check it, and then you'll be fine. So then with the noise texture selected, press Ctrl T, move this object over here into the vector of the mapping node. Then you can Control Shift and left click this noise texture to see what's going on. And this is what we have as a material right here. Then on the scale, we're going to want to change this one to a 20. The detail, we're going to want to change to a 12. And the roughness, we're going to want to leave there. And the distortion, we'll put it at 1. Next, we're going to hit Shift A, search for our color ramp, so we can further tweak this noise texture. Then we're going to take this white and we're going to drag it in to something close to a 0.5, because currently what we're making are the surface imperfections of the object, and so we don't want there to be super imperfect, but yeah, basically something about a 0.49, 0.5, something like that. I'll leave it right here. This is pretty good, just some little scratches here and there. Then to add some more surface imperfections, we're going to hit Shift A and search for a Musgrave texture. We'll plug the vector from the mapping into the Musgrave. Then I'm just going to go ahead and grab these and move them to the left a little bit so they're not taking up too much space. Then on this Musgrave texture, we can Control Shift and left click to preview it. We will be switching the mode right here to multi-fractal instead of FBM, scale to a 4, the detail to a 12, the dimension to a 0.13, and then the Lackanur, whatever that word is, we'll leave it where it is. Then we'll hit Shift A, search for a color ramp, and now we can further tweak this slightly. To do that, we will bring the white in, just so we have even less surface imperfections. We'll bring this to about a 0.35, something like that, maybe a little higher, just so that it's not dominating the screen, essentially, is what we want. So we have some more surface imperfections. So now we have these, and we should have to combine them. And to do that, we'll hit Shift A, search for a Mix RGB node, like this. And then we'll plug, doesn't matter what colors we plug them into, but I'll just keep it color 1 and color 2 to keep it looking nicely. Then we'll switch from Mix to Multiply, and make sure you go ahead and check this clamp button right here, and then switch the factor all the way up to a 1. So now we have these mixing properly, and we have all of our surface imperfections. So the next step we're going to be doing is adding the color in. So to do that, we'll hit Shift A, search for our color ramp, and we're going to be putting the factor from the first noise texture into the color ramp. Then if we Control Shift left click to preview this color ramp, we're going to select the black and we're going to open it up, and we're going to make it sort of a reddish brown. So the hue is going to be something really low, like a 0.15, like something like that. And then the value, we're going to bring that up to something close to a 0.8. Oops, I'll just type in 0.8 exactly, why not? And then saturation will be something close to a 0.75. So pretty saturated, which is sort of looking like a copper. Then the other color, we're just gonna go ahead and use the eyedropper tool and select the first one. Then we're gonna lower the saturation slightly. And or not, oops, I lowered the value. We're going to up the value slightly and lower the saturation like this, so that they're pretty similar. They're just slightly different. You can't really tell, but it is a slight difference. Then the color is done, so we will take this color and plug it into the color of the material. And if you Control Shift left click the shader, this is what we currently have. So if we want to preview what it looks like metallic, we can up the metallic to a 1 real quick, and we can see this. And then the roughness, if we put it all the way down, is looking like this. But we'd obviously need the surface imperfections to be interacting with everything, so it's not perfectly rough or perfectly smooth and stuff like that. And so we're going to be adding that right now. So the first step towards that is we're going to add another color ramp. Then we're going to take this mix value and plug it into the color ramp. Then on these colors, we're going to be switching this right here. This is going to be for the metallic map. The value, we're going to switch to a 0.975. So it's very close to white. And what this means is the more white it is, the more metallic the material is. And copper is pretty much metallic all the way around. But we didn't want it to be like perfectly everything, so we just made it very close to perfectly metallic. And if we preview the shader, it's still pretty perfectly metallic. So the next step is going to be Shift A, search for another color ramp. This is going to be for our roughness. We're going to drag this color into here. And then on this color ramp, we're going to be tweaking the values a little bit. So the first step is we're going to bring in this right here to about a 0.78, something like that. 0.77, why not? Then we're going to be switching the color on this guy to a 0.1 on the value, just so that it's very rough, because on this one, the more black it is, the less rough it is, because white means more and black means less in color ramp language, basically. So then this black color, we're going to be switching to a 0.4, so that the surface imperfections are more rough than the rest of the metal. So we'll take this color and plug it into our roughness, and if we preview the shader, we are getting very close to being done with the refined one, and it's looking pretty good. You can see the surface imperfections blocking the reflections in areas, and it's looking how it's supposed to. So the last step is going to be the bump. So we'll hit Shift A, search for our color ramp like this, and we'll be taking this color into the color ramp like so. Then on this first color, we're going to be switching the value of the black to a 0.125. And the second color, we'll be switching the value to a 0.1, just so that they are very close and we don't have to deal with a bunch of stuff messing up or anything, because it's not really bumpy because it is metal. So we're going to take this and we're going to move it into like a 0.7, something like that, 0.709, that's close enough. And we preview what this is looking like. We can tell that it's very close together. The surface imperfections aren't going to be that bumpy. They're just going to catch the light slightly more. Anyways, next we'll hit Shift A and search for a bump node. Like this, just move the color into the height. And if we Control Shift left click to preview the bump node, we can see that the surface imperfections are sticking out way too much, because they're going to be catching light that they shouldn't be. So we're going to switch the strength to a 0.05. And now we can barely tell the difference. You probably can't even tell on my recording. Maybe right here you can tell, but yeah. Then we'll plug in this normal into here and Control Shift left click to preview the shader. And this is the finished material you see in the thumbnail. So now, as promised, I'm going to show you how to make the rougher version of this material. So to do that, the first thing we're going to do is make sure you check this fake user button right here, just so that if it never disappears, this material doesn't. So then we'll hit new material right here. And basically what this does is it duplicates the previous one. So instead of calling this one refined copper, we'll call this one like, I don't know, old copper or something like that. And then to switch the settings on this one, we have two ways to make this rougher. One, we can make it look like it has dust on it or something. Or two, we can make it look like it was sort of scratched through and it's sort of shiny or on the bottom. So to make it look like it was shinier on the bottom and scratched through, all we have to do is make the surface imperfections less rough. So we'll make this like a 0.1. And then we have to make the main part of the metal rougher than the other. So something like a 0.6 or 7 would do, maybe like 0.55. And then we sort of get this going on here, and it's sort of scratched through and shinier on the bottom. And something to do when you do this is make sure you hit invert on this bump so that the surface imperfections are lower, so they sort of like got scratched under like it's supposed to. So that is how you make one. So we'll call this one scratched copper, I guess. And then to make another one, we'll go ahead and do this. And this one we'll call dusty copper. And how we do that one is we uncheck this invert. Then we'll go over to here. This is the surface imperfections, right? So we're gonna make this pretty rough. We'll make this like a 0.85. And then this other, we'll make this a little less rough, not too much, maybe like a 0.45 or a 0.4, something like that. So it's still slightly reflective. And then it looks like it has some dust on it here. And so those are just some ways that you can mess with the surface imperfections a little bit and get some different variations of this material. And if you have any suggestions in the future of some materials that you find that are really common that you need but don't have, drop a comment or something letting me know what materials those are. I'll figure out a way to make them and then I'll show you how to do it. So yeah, anyways, thank you for watching. Come back to my channel if you ever need more materials done and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one.